Greetings to everyone who wants to make life in old age not just peaceful, but filled with joy, inner strength, and independence. When we talk about how we want to live in old age, many people have in their minds the image of a cozy home, warm meetings with family and friends, and of course, good health. But often these dreams hide quite realistic fears. What if I have to ask for help from my children? Will I be able to lead my usual life if my health fails? Or will I have enough money not to feel like a burden? All of these questions are on the minds of so many people, and today I want to share practical tips and stories that will help you answer them. You will learn how to increase your health to stay awake and active at any age, how to properly manage your finances so as not to depend on handouts from children, as well as how to maintain mental balance in good relationships with loved ones. Sit back and let's get closer, step by step, to the dignified, independent, and joyful old age that we all deserve. Think back to when you were a child looking at older people and not understanding why they complain so often about their health or life around them. At a young age, it rarely crosses your mind that sore knees or chronic illnesses can drastically change the way you live your life. However, the older we get, the more important prevention becomes. No, this doesn't necessarily mean running marathons at 70 or going on rigid diets and giving up all the pleasures of life. The point is quite different. Each of us can choose moderate physical activity, pay attention to nutrition and well-being, listen to the signals of the body. Have you noticed how often the health of an elderly person also affects their emotional state? It is one thing to wake up in the morning feeling relatively alert. You can go for a walk, do your favorite activity, spend time with your family. And it is quite another when every morning starts with a chain of ailments. Backache, joints do not bend, and any household task seems to be an insurmountable challenge. From here often grow irritability, dissatisfaction with themselves and the world. Sometimes in communication with relatives begins to crack at the seams because the constant complaints are hard to bear. But there is a way out, and it lies in the prevention and maintenance of the habit of movement. Yes, we are talking about simple, at first glance, the truth. A light exercise in the morning, short walks in the fresh air, leisurely exercises for the joints. Those who embody this in their lives usually note that they find it much easier to maintain not only physical activity, but also a positive attitude for the day. Let it sound cliché, but a little daily exercise has more effect than the occasional burst of gym trips once every 6 months. Add to this an emphasis on a balanced diet, and you have the foundation for a long and productive life. The body needs to be nourished with quality foods, not overloaded with unhealthy meals and overeating. It is not necessary to turn your whole life into a list of strict prohibitions, but moderation in food, emphasis on vegetables, protein, enough water. These are time-tested measures that really work. The emotional health aspect is equally important. Stress, anxiety, and negative emotions are what often undermine us from the inside out and are especially dangerous for older people. Optimism is dulled, irritability appears, relationships with loved ones deteriorate. But think about it. There are people who remain cheerful no matter what. They look at every day as an opportunity to do something pleasant for themselves and others. The secret of such people is not in a magic cure, but in their ability to see the good and not linger in the bad. Is it possible to learn this? Definitely yes. Not immediately. Let it require effort and time, but you can learn it at any age. It is a training of mind and character, similar to physical training for the body. Now let's move on to the issue that many people worry about as much as health: finances. Our financial situation in old age directly affects how we feel about ourselves. If a person lacks money even for necessary things, it causes constant stress and a feeling of dependence. Realizing this, it is worth thinking in advance about how to competently dispose of your property, savings, pension. It is very important to realize the difference between reasonable frugality and extremes. Sometimes elderly people excessively save on everything, even on food or medicines. On the other hand, sometimes elderly people fall for the tricks of scammers who trick them into taking dubious and expensive drugs or courses. Both options are highly undesirable. Have you ever wondered why so many fraudulent schemes revolve around the elderly? Because some pensioners are lured by the idea of a magic method to regain their youth, cure all diseases, or increase their savings instantly. Unfortunately, this is exactly what scam artists use in their advertising. Therefore, it is important to be vigilant and critically evaluate each new tempting offer. Remember the golden rule: if something sounds too good to be true, it's probably a scam. You should be especially careful with free gifts, excursions where it is offered to undergo unique diagnostics, or buy miracle drugs. Always consult your relatives or doctors. Check information on the internet. Today, it is easier than ever. But how can you establish a dialogue with children, ask their opinion, or warn them that something alarms you without feeling like a burden? The secret here lies in heart-to-heart contact. When the family's warm and trusting relationships, the elderly person is not perceived as someone who must be tolerated and fed. On the contrary, if parents give their children moral support, respect their personal space, value their time, and do not try to endlessly tell them what to do and how to do it, children are more likely to want to help themselves. It becomes a mutual respect. Imagine how pleasant it is for children to see that their father or mother is a person with whom they can have a heart-to-heart talk, laugh, get wise advice. This format of communication takes years to build, but it's never too late to start working on it. Sometimes it is enough to stop teaching and criticizing and start listening more. Often older people are sad that they are not understood by the younger generation. But imagine yourself in the shoes of your grandchildren or children who live in an age of technology that is changing at lightning speed. If you only talk to them about past times, about how it used to be better, it's hard for them to maintain interest because they didn't live in those times. But if you try to understand what is relevant for young people today, ask questions and show a sincere interest in their hobbies, your family will begin to look at you differently, and you yourself will be interested in expanding your horizons. Let's touch on one more important point: the psychological line between to be independent and be able to accept help. Some people are too afraid to sit on the neck of the children and try to hide their problems from them until the last. Others, on the contrary, almost demand help at every trifle. You need to find a balance. Try to maintain autonomy in everything that you really can and want to do on your own. But at the same time, do not hesitate to ask for help when you really need it. Sometimes children and grandchildren even take offense when elderly parents stubbornly refuse to accept basic support. So try to be realistic. If you have always been a pillar for your family, believe me, loved ones will consider it an honor to help you when it is really necessary. Let's move on to the topic of leisure and personal interests. With age, some people stop practicing the hobbies that used to delight them and gradually fall into indifference. Why does this happen? Some people have the feeling that, since I am retired, there is nothing to be happy about. Some have physical limitations. It's hard for me to walk a lot, let alone fish or dance. But the truth is that with a competent approach, you can always adapt your favorite occupation to your new opportunities. Like to travel a lot, you can arrange small excursions in nature or in neighboring cities. Like to sing, visit a karaoke club, or sing at home with music no one forbids. The main thing: do not give up what gives you positive emotions. Read, write, draw. Creativity is often a great escape from the feeling of loneliness and gives inspiration to live on with interest. Let's touch on the topic of technology as well. Some elderly people do not like smartphones and computers, considering it a youth toy. But with the help of the same phones, you can solve a lot of everyday tasks: pay bills, watch useful videos, learn recipes, communicate with friends who live in another city or country. This tool gives you freedom. When you know how to use your phone and the internet, you don't have to ask someone to go to the bank for you or make a doctor's appointment for you. You can do it yourself. These are basic things that make life a lot easier and keep your self-respect intact. Realize there is nothing shameful about asking your children or grandchildren to teach you how to use messengers, websites, and apps. You'll be surprised how many of them are willing to help with great enthusiasm. The topic of fraud on the internet deserves special attention. On the one hand, technology can make life much easier, but on the other hand, it opens the way for con artists who come up with ever more sophisticated schemes. Congratulations, you've won $1 million. Click the link to claim your prize. And sound familiar? Many people, having seen such a thing, will wonder, what if I'm lucky? But this is a trap to trick you out of your data or money. Remember, do not give out your personal data to anyone. Do not share passwords and codes. It's always better to double-check your information. If you receive a call and introduce yourself as a bank employee, it is better to call back to the bank at the official number indicated on the card. In this way, you will save both your money and nerves. Now let's talk a little about how to combine your own life with helping your loved ones. Often elderly parents help their children, for example, sit with their grandchildren, take them to school or circles. On the one hand, this is great because you remain involved in the life of the family, you feel needed. On the other hand, grandparents often begin to take on too much, losing the opportunity to live for themselves. The result is fatigue, irritation, even conflict situations when no one can say directly, "It's hard for me." Try to discuss with your children what you can really do and what you can't. Don't be afraid to set limits. You don't have to give your whole life to your grandchildren, depriving yourself of rest and personal interests. Balance is important in everything. By the way, often people of age who have hobbies and socializing outside the family seem more interesting to children. After all, you have your own life, your own circle of discussion. This makes both children and grandchildren treat you not as a servant at hand, but as a person who has his own interests, purpose, and who should be respected too. In this way, your own development and hobbies can strengthen family relationships rather than weaken them. But what do you do if you're late in catching on and feel like it's already past time to build trust in hobbies? Start with small steps. Pick one thing. For example, try to study a short article, or watch an instructional video on an interesting topic each week, or join a local retirement club. You'll find people with similar goals. They may not have had time to pursue a hobby before either. It's amazing how quickly in such an environment, the desire to do something, to try new things, to share impressions returns. And this helps to feel the taste for life. It happens that retired people realize, now no one is preventing me from doing what I always wanted to do. I have freedom, time. But at the same time, it is difficult for some people to move to the realization of these desires because the habit of working on a schedule, constant employment, responsibility for the family did not give room for entertainment. Suddenly there is emptiness, and a person does not know what to do. Here the main thing is not to be afraid of experiments. Try different activities until you find something that really captivates. If you can't do it alone, look for like-minded people. You will be amazed at how many people in adulthood are happy to change their lives, learn new skills, creative directions, crafts. This is not a luxury, but a natural human need to learn and develop. We will also touch upon the topic of financial protection against unforeseen situations. Very often, elderly people find themselves in a difficult situation when there is a need for treatment or rehabilitation, and there are no savings for this. That is why, if you have the opportunity, try to create a financial safety cushion. Yes, it is not always easy, especially if your pension is small, but small steps can achieve more than you think. Consider opening a deposit so you don't have money lying around at home under the mattress, where inflation can devalue it. Learn about insurance programs that offer compensation for serious illnesses. This is boring and seemingly complicated information, but it can be crucial at a critical time. When it comes to the financial side, many people who are older say with resentment, "I've worked all my life and now I have a pittance." And that causes bitterness. Of course, we all have different life stories, and not everyone has had the opportunity to build up large savings. But it is important not to go to the extreme. Constant reproach of fate, the government, or children who do not help enough. After all, reproaches do not improve reality. It is much more effective to ask, what can I do in today's situation to make it a little better? Sometimes even a small increase in your pension, which can be earned through part-time work or part-time jobs, can give you a sense of satisfaction. For example, if you can bake cakes, knit warm clothes, or give music lessons, it can become a mini business that not only helps with money, but also makes life brighter. And of course, we cannot ignore the issue of loneliness. This is one of the most painful moments for older people, especially if a spouse has passed away, children are busy with their own affairs, and old friends have moved away or have also left. It is important to realize that loneliness can strike at any age, and salvation lies in the ability to make contacts and new connections. You can join local clubs, societies, religious communities, if this is close to you. Communication is our everything. It gives us emotional support and interest in life. Understand that it is normal to ask for friendship and seek new acquaintances. You may be surprised to find out how many people in your city suffer from the same feelings of isolation. Once you find common interests, things will start to change. Now back to emotional stability. Why do I keep saying over and over again that a calm attitude and the ability to see the positive side is very important? Because psychological problems are more acute in old age. Small troubles can be perceived as catastrophes, and failures can cause severe anxiety. If physical discomfort is superimposed, doubly so. So learn relaxation, gratitude, and mindfulness in your life. Sometimes a short morning meditation or breathing exercise, coupled with a list of things you are grateful for, can set the tone for the day. It's not a trendy overseas practice, but a useful skill that helps your brain switch to positivity. Continuing the conversation, it's worth noting the difference between a healthy dose of reminiscing and lingering nostalgia that gets in the way of living in the present. Sharing stories about the past is great because that's how you pass on family values, knowledge, and experience to the younger generation. But when all communication is based only on the phrases, "but in our time," people used to be different, sausage used to taste better, etc., it becomes difficult for young people to maintain a dialogue. After all, they are interested in new technologies, modern movies, events happening now. Try to tell about your past, linking it to the present. Do you know how I used to look for information when I was young? I went to the library, leafed through encyclopedias. It's amazing that today you can find everything on your phone in a couple of seconds. Then both the young will be interested in comparing how times have changed, and you will keep in touch without falling into endless lamentations that it was better. Note, I am in no way diminishing the value of memories. They are our treasure, and it's important to pass them on. But if you want your family to not only love you as an ancestor, but also appreciate you as an interlocutor, look for points of contact with their world. Ask, what are the most difficult subjects at school right now? What's the new app you're using to communicate? Tell me what interesting things happened this week. These questions show that you care about their lives. After all, relationships are built on mutual interest, and note that when you show a sincere interest, you can learn and be surprised. Finally, I would like to talk about what makes our old age really happy. If we summarize all of the above, there are a few key points. 1. Physical activity and proper nutrition are all things that keep our bodies working and reduce the risk of serious illness. 2. Financial security, the ability to manage savings, avoid scammers, maintain independence, and, if necessary, to work part-time or realize talents. 3. Emotional balance, the ability to maintain a positive attitude, minimize stress, forgive offenses, and learn to look for joy in everyday moments. 4th, social engagement, having contacts, friends, participating in activities, socializing with children and grandchildren on the basis of mutual understanding and respect. 5. Self-realization and hobbies, any activities that are satisfying and develop the mind or creativity. 6. Awareness in the present, the ability to live here and now, enjoying the little things, not dwelling on the past and not hiding from the future. Think about it. How much the quality of life changes if you fulfill these points at least partially. Even if you're already 70, 80 or more, it is never too late to improve your life. Time is a strange thing. It flows all the time, but at the same time, it gives us the opportunity to change at any second. In the sequel, I want to tell more interesting stories and tips so that you know for sure a happy and independent old age is not an accident, but the result of certain steps and decisions. Don't miss the second part of this text, because there I will share additional details, methods of improving health, relationships with family, and ways to financial stability, which are not always on the surface. Continuing our conversation, I would like to dispel one widespread myth. In old age, life fades away because the best is behind us. In fact, many people only after retirement begin to feel that they finally have free time and the opportunity to do exactly what they have always been interested in. Yes, physical strength changes, but that's no reason to give up on self-development. After all, if you look at the world, it is not uncommon for older people to become authors of great books, paintings, and even blogs on the internet, simply because they finally decided to realize their long-held dream. It is only necessary to allow yourself to believe that age does not limit, but rather gives experience and depth. Let's look at specific examples. Imagine that a person all his life liked to cook and try unusual recipes, but constant work, chores, raising children did not leave time for culinary experiments. Now that the children have grown up, work takes a back seat. You can dive into this hobby with your head. Some people start cooking channels on the internet, share their recipes, and surprisingly quickly gather an audience. And you know what the best part is? It helps you feel needed and sometimes even brings in a little income. It's important to realize that it's never too late to try new things and share your knowledge with others. Another area that we often underestimate is volunteering. Many elderly people say, "How can I help others? I don't have the energy to run around in institutions." But volunteering isn't always about physical activity. It can be helping with advice, mentoring, participating in social programs by phone or online. People often need support from those who have already gone through the difficulties of life and can share not only theory, but also practical experience. When you help others, you yourself feel a surge of energy because you realize that your experience is valuable. And this is an incredibly important realization at any age, to be needed, to remain an important link in society. Let's move on to the topic of relations with friends and colleagues. Many people over the years have a smaller social circle. Someone has moved away, someone has passed away, someone has simply stopped communicating. A feeling of isolation arises. However, in the modern world, there are a lot of opportunities for new acquaintances. Hobby clubs, social organizations, even thematic meetings in cafes. If you are fond of needlework or collect stamps, coins, why not find like-minded people? Common hobbies unite people of any age. Yes, at first it can be scary to go to an unfamiliar place, but practice shows that most groups are happy to accept newcomers, especially those who are willing to share their experience or at least show genuine curiosity. Some older people are afraid to learn new technologies, complaining that everything changes too quickly. But even this can be turned into an interesting journey. If you have friends or grandchildren who are willing to show you how to use video, social media, and simple websites, go for it. Many people are confused at first, feeling out of place, but then you realize that it gives huge advantages. You can keep in touch with friends who live on the other side of the country, find interest groups on the internet, learn the latest news from the comfort of your own home. The main thing is to treat it not as a mandatory hard work, but as a fascinating experiment. It's amazing how quickly you can get the hang of it when you are motivated. Let's not forget that inner development never ends. Sometimes elderly people become interested in spiritual practices, yoga, reading philosophical literature, things for which they did not have time or energy before. And this is wonderful. The main thing is to listen to yourself, not to mindlessly follow fashionable trends. If you are interested in studying certain questions about the meaning of life, the structure of the world, do not hesitate to read, watch lectures, discuss with like-minded people. This gives food for thought, motivates to an active way of thinking. The brain is an amazing organ that can learn and reorganize itself at almost any age if we stimulate it to do so. Our life is not limited to health and finances, although they are important. Life is also about relationships, state of mind, interest in the world around us, and the desire to do something new. But I want to pay a little extra attention to the topic of finances, because unfortunately, in old age, it is material difficulties that often knock the ground out from under your feet. It's good if you have managed to accumulate savings or have real estate, which is rented out and brings passive income. But what if you haven't? Many people don't have significant savings, and the pension they receive leaves a lot to be desired. A key piece of advice that financial advisors give is diversification. Don't keep all your money in one place if you already have enough to distribute. But even if the amount is small, it is important to figure out how to use it properly so that it does not burn from inflation. Deposit rates in banks change, but it is a safer tool than keeping money under your pillow. If you are thinking about investing, consult with professionals, not with obscure brokers who promise golden mountains. Be especially careful with schemes of quick riches. The probability of coming across a fraud is very high. As for part-time employment, it can be a part-time job or some one-off orders. In the age of the internet, you do not have to leave your home for this. There are freelance exchanges where you can offer services. For example, consulting, translating texts, writing articles, if you have the appropriate skills. Maybe you are good at sewing or knitting, and your work can be sold through social networks. The main thing is to realize that older age does not mean stop and full retirement. Being able to make a little money on your own not only makes life easier, but also boosts your self-esteem. You feel like you are capable of more than just receiving a pension. Let's also talk about family. Usually the main problem that elderly parents complain about is the lack of attention from their children. They are always busy at work, they have their own friends, and I sit at home alone. This does happen. The pace of life in the younger generation is often very high. But think about it. Do you always make it clear that you would like to see or communicate more often? Is it possible that your children think, Dad, Grandpa, likes to be alone? He probably doesn't want us to bother him? Or are they afraid that you are too harsh in your judgment and will criticize their lifestyle? Talk openly, state your desires and feelings, but listen to their point of view as well. Try to organize joint meetings, offer something that you are both interested in. Someone likes kebabs in nature. Someone prefers to sit at home for board games. Opportunities for joint pastime a lot if you show a little initiative and flexibility. If you are faced with the fact that one of the children is not ready to give you enough time, do not take it only as a personal insult. Dig into how he lives, what problems he faces. It happens that a person physically does not have time between work, their own children, and household duties. Then it may be worth finding a compromise, certain days or at least hours when you agree in advance to call or meet. Use video calling, messaging to shorten the distance. Emotional support and kind words are sometimes more important than just, come sit, be quiet and leave. Now let's touch on the topic of psychological flexibility. What does it mean for an elderly person? It is the ability to adapt to new conditions, whether it is a change of residence, the need to live together with children, change of social circle, the emergence of new neighbors, or perhaps the tragedies associated with the passing of loved ones. Flexibility is not a weakness, but rather a strong quality that shows you are willing to continue living without getting stuck in the past. Often, older people who are able to accept change keep their interest in life and socializing. If you suddenly have to move in with your children or to another location, it can cause a sense of loss of independence. But if the circumstances are such that it's really necessary, for health or financial reasons, it's important to try to make the most of your space. Take with you your favorite things, books, furnishings that will remind you of your former home and give you comfort. Don't think of moving as entering someone else's monastery. Try to contribute to the common household if possible. Cook something tasty, help with advice, show participation, but do not interfere in everything. In this way, you will feel that you continue to be a full-fledged master of your life, even if you now share space with others. Another difficult moment is the passing of a spouse. In later life, such a loss is felt especially acutely as people have lived together for decades. The feeling of emptiness and loneliness can be enormous. Here you need to give yourself time to grieve. Do not drive the pain inside and do not try to jump over it. It is good if you have family and friends who are ready to support you, but if you don't, you can always find support groups, online communities where people share their experiences. It is important to realize that life goes on, and you have the right to be happy, even if your loved one is gone. Feeling guilty about going on with your life can be paralyzing, but after all, nothing will bring back the past, and your main goal becomes to cherish the memory of your loved one while allowing yourself to rejoice in the new days. Moving on to more positive stories, I would like to touch on how some elderly people manage to keep their souls young. They can go out to visit, play board games, learn to dance, attend concerts, or even hangouts. You may have seen such people. Their eyes are burning, they radiate energy, and no one would say that they are already 70 or 80. Their secret is that they are not afraid of appearing too old to have fun. They understand. Joy has no age limit. Of course, it is important to focus on your health, but in most cases, there are many forms of leisure activities that are available even with limitations. The main thing is not to put artificial barriers to yourself in the style of, "It's too late for me." If you have the desire and opportunity, do it. Another useful quality is the ability to maintain gratitude for what you have. Remember how many times as a child you heard adults arguing and being indignant over nothing? You may have thought at the time, "I'll never be like that," but life twists us around, and years later we are already grumbling about the weather, prices, government, children, etc. Meanwhile, gratitude is a simple and effective practice. Try noticing 3 to 5 things you are grateful for each day. It could be a delicious meal, a call from a friend, a nice walk, or even a favorite book that caught your eye. When you focus on the good things, the feeling of hard scarcity goes away and anxiety is lessened. By the way, don't forget about preventive medical checkups, because early detection of problems is the key to solving them more effectively. Some people are afraid of doctors and trips to the clinic, trying to delay a visit until it's not hot at all. But this approach often ends up with the fact that the disease goes too far. Reasonable prevention and timely checkups can really save your health and money. Early treatment is usually easier and cheaper. In addition, you will be calmer knowing that you are in control of the situation rather than guessing when something hurts. An important point I would like to make is about emotions and the ability to manage them. As we age, we become more vulnerable, often reacting sharply to the words or actions of loved ones. This can be due to hormonal changes, pain sensations, accumulated experience, or simply fatigue. But if you learn to recognize the alarm bells in your behavior, increased irritability, outbursts of resentment, you can manage to stop in time and calmly consider the situation. Sometimes you should just say to yourself, "Stop, I'm worried now not because of my son, grandson, but because I slept badly or have a headache." There's no need to take it out on loved ones. A calm conversation without yelling is always more productive, and you will save the relationship. Finally, I want to emphasize that everything we talked about is not a set of rigid rules, but a set of recommendations and life principles that have been tested over time. Of course, each fate is individual, and it is impossible to cut all the stories to the same cloth. But the main idea is that we often shape a happy and independent old age with our own hands long before it comes, through our habits, ability to keep in touch, careful handling of money, emphasis on health and positivity. If you feel like you're a late starter in making changes, don't be disheartened. Any improvement, whether it's a couple of new exercises, giving up a bad habit, warming up with your kids, learning one useful skill, is a way forward. Old age can be a wonderful time if you approach it from a "I've been written off" perspective. I have experience and resources. How can I use them to my advantage? And believe me, when you become a source of light and joy for yourself, it will be reflected in your loved ones. It will be pleasant for them to be near you, to communicate, to support you. Your example will inspire them to look at life more courageously and kindly. Maybe your optimism will become the ray that they lacked. Older people have an enormous potential for wisdom and kindness because they have decades of experience behind them. All that remains is to open it up to the world, not to shut down and not to let fears and sadness take over. So we've covered a lot of topics: health, finances, relationships, hobbies, emotional intelligence. All of these are not just words on paper. They are things that can actually impact your life for the better. Whether you want to change something or not, the choice is yours. But if you decide to, start with a small step today. Walk an extra 10 minutes. Call a friend you haven't talked to in a long time. Sign up for a small savings program at the bank. Read a new book. Learn how to use an app on your phone. It is from such seemingly small things that our life is formed. And let every day of your life be filled not with longing for the past years, but with a bright confidence that there are many more joyful moments ahead. Thank you very much for listening, reading all this to the end. If this information was useful to you, be sure to tell your friends, relatives, and colleagues about it. Perhaps they too are looking for answers to their questions and don't know who to turn to. Remember that together we can support each other, share our findings, and rejoice in our successes. After all, a truly independent and happy old age is not a luxury, but an achievable reality if you approach it with perseverance, wisdom, and love for yourself and the world. I wish you good health, positive mood, and well-being in your family. Continue to take care of yourself, learn new things, stay away from scammers, and don't forget, age is just a mark in your passport, and life is largely determined by the heart you have for it. That's all for now. Take care of yourself and see you soon.